Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Shortly after we detonated the first atomic bomb, there was a craft that came down in that area that we retrieved. There were actually 3 extraterrestrial vehicles involved. We have a document. It describes the new radar system that we had put in at Roswell. So that when something is painted or tracked on radar, it's then hit with an electromagnetic weapon. 3 of these ET craft that were over that area, 2 of them collided. One was in a bazillion pieces. The other one continued westward near Socorro, impacted, and it broke. And there were extraterrestrial bodies and I know of one living ET taken from there. The third one wasn't found, and I believe it's till 1951, up in the mountains going way northwest of Roswell, up in the mountains in New Mexico. One survivor that we captured, it lived about 4 years, I think, captivity.
Okay, wow, there's a lot to unpack here.
I do believe the good doctor there is telling us what he believes to be the truth. I just don't know that I trust his intel. I don't believe that he is intentionally lying to us or anything like that. Whatever intelligence you gather from the government, I always take it with a grain of salt.
Finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. An investigation was launched into this whole subject, and a document was prepared which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. The survival plan for the human species as an aide-memoire, and I name 5 different species here. I'm aware of more now. As a matter of fact, I saw a document just a few days ago that mentioned 20. And I think you, Mr. Chairman, were interested in some of the places they might come from. And I have in here Zeta Reticuli, R-E-T-I-C-U-L-I, Reticuli, the Pleiades, Orion, Andromeda, and the Altair star systems. So I don't think we can any more refer to them as they, because they're not an amorphous mass. They are different species and consequently may have different agendas. I don't think we can say that they all have the same agenda any more than we could say that the United States, China, and Russia have the same agenda. Our real interests may be very similar, but as of now, our perceived interests are still quite far apart. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall, and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin, but after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force.
I don't trust the Canadian government at all. I think they're way more crooked than the U.S. government, and I think the U.S. government's as crooked as they come. But this dude is supposed to be sharing all this inside knowledge, and he can't even pronounce Orion correctly. I don't think he's as knowledgeable as he's trying to appear to be.
The Vatican archives. In the 1920s, there's a Russian professor. His name was Gingrich Ludwig. He was able to have access to the archives. 12 centuries of European history. He walked up on this one section, which was ancient books about aliens, and he came across the craziest stuff. These books talked about how these star people coming down in crafts taught all the ancient civilizations how to build the pyramids, and taught the Mayans things, and like all this crazy stuff. And then, this is what I thought was the craziest part, but he writes down that these things had these weapons, and I guess they used it once on Babylon, and said that this weapon that these things possessed melted the walls of Babylon with the amount of energy and heat that they produce. And today we're like, those are nuclear weapons. And I'm just like, why are they hiding this stuff?
Is the Tower of Babel was supposed to be in Babylon, correct? So could this not be an alternate depiction of what happened to the Tower of Babel? Just a thought, interesting to think about.
There can be no time travel because so far, no one from the future has ever shown up and said, hi.
What that requires is that there's no time travel to the past, because the future person would then be coming to the past. We can travel into the future, however. Our understanding of that has been around since 1905, and it's Einstein's special theory of relativity. If I send you on a spaceship at speeds nearing the speed of light, and we watch you, we will see that your clock ticks more slowly than our own. And then you come back, it's the famous twin study. You send out your twin, they can come back, you aged 20 years, your twin would have aged only 10, depending on the exact speed. And so in that way, your twin went into the future. Now, you're right about the past. We don't know yet how to go into the past. There's some peculiar solutions of Einstein's equations that allow past travel, but then you can't interact with your life. You're in sort of another place. Because imagine if you could interact with your own life, prevent your parents from meeting. Then you would never conceive. Then you could have never been sent back in time to prevent your parents from meeting.
Just to play devil's advocate here, Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong. Time travel to the future is not possible because we can't send anyone past our radiation belt. So you can't put somebody in a spaceship and send them out for 10 years, come back, and now they're 20 years older.
The launch
2024.
What?
Yeah.
Next year?
Next year. It's real-life Jurassic Park with purpose. Starting with, I think, 100 mammoths and putting them in this park in Siberia as to what happens when you add megafauna back into the Arctic tundra to offset carbon emissions.
They're using what DNA? They're using elephant DNA?
Indian elephant is the closest living relative to the woolly mammoth. They're using CRISPR technology, and they're using existing mammoth DNA, and they're making an embryo, and then they're implanting it into the Indian elephant, and 22 months later, an Indian elephant's gestation period, she will give birth to a mammoth.
A real mammoth?
A real mammoth.
So it's not like a hybrid?
If you imagine the DNA of an animal, and then you imagine the fragments that are broken out of it, what they're doing is they're taking that DNA, and all those pieces that are missing from the mammoth, they're putting in Indian elephant pieces.
This seems like a horrible, horrible idea. I don't think that bringing back extinct species that supposedly died out is really a great idea. We don't know if they're predisposed to easily contracting certain diseases and stuff that aren't even around anymore. There's that chronic wasting disease that's in deer all over the United States that they're just waiting for that to jump over to humans. What is that called? It's like a brain amoeba thing, but they suspect that at some point it could transfer over to humans, and then you're going to have people that literally look like zombies. Because if you look at these pictures of these deer and stuff, that's what they look like, is zombie deer. Their body just deteriorates while they're up walking around. But what if we create this species, not knowing that it's just the right species to easily contract this chronic wasting disease and then spread it to humans? There's just so many things that could go wrong. It's just a horrible, horrible idea. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I make a new one just like it every day. It's Christmas Eve, and here I am. It would be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back to join me tomorrow.
Moses is not the real name. That's the made-up name. It really was Pharaoh Akhenaten. Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was ushering in monotheism in Egypt while he was a pharaoh, worshiping Amen-Ra, the great Amen. Amen-Ra was one of these Anunnaki people, said, look, from now on there'll be no other God but me. That made it into the Bible. When you say thanks, you say thanks to me, you say amen. That made it into the Bible. Teach the people only to worship me, not any of my other relatives. I'm the only one and true God. And he began to do that. Then he made an order to go start defacing all the hieroglyphs and all of these statues around Egypt. That's why the noses and the ears are chipped off. That's why the faces are chipped off everywhere you go. Bodies are chipped away. It wasn't done, the hypothesis on the streets is that it was done because white people back then didn't want black people to know that there were black people in Egypt. That's actually false. The true reality is this was done in ancient times, and it was carried on by Coptic Christians long before Jesus was even born. They were still following that same monotheistic religion, and to them it was offensive to have these faces of all these gods around because it's only one true and only one God, the great Amen.
You know, we've seen a lot from this guy, and he seems very well educated. He seems to really do his research and speaks with pretty good authority, like he really knows what he's talking about. Not that that means anything, but you know, I've gotten a pretty good impression of him so far. until this video. This seems very far-fetched. It seems like he's really reaching. I do like the theory of why the noses and ears and things are defaced on all these statues. That does make sense, that it was just done by a jealous king or pharaoh or whatever you want to call it, who just said, go out and destroy all this stuff because I'm the only important one. To claim that, that's the God that we read about in the Bible, or that's why we say amen at the end of a sentence or at the end of a prayer, I don't know. I just don't buy it.
When I've gone in to look at the cultures like the Maya and the Aztec and down into the Inca, even into Mesopotamia and into the Egyptians and into everywhere, that you find that those ancient megalithic structures and lost technology, is that there may have been multiple versions of those cultures that came and went. Down in Mexico, there's a place called Uxmal, and Uxmal is an incredible Mayan temple, and the name itself means built 3 times. If you had an ancient culture that predated what we think of as the Maya, and they were wiped out by some catastrophe, and then another culture came later, or the remnants of that culture tried to rebuild again, would we consider that the Maya? Even though the Maya were gone, it was just the descendants of them. We have to start being careful with how we view these cultures, because when I look at something like the Olmec, they look like a culture that was much, much predated what we think of as the Aztec. So there are many layers to this cake. There are many layers to understanding this. You see that in places like Machu Picchu down in South America. You see the most sophisticated building on the bottom, and then gradually less sophisticated with brick and mortar at the top, meaning that those cultures on the bottom were wiped out, and then the cultures that came later tried to mimic them. So that's why it's difficult to categorize who did what and who is responsible for what.
I gotta say, I've seen enough of this stuff now about these ancient civilizations that were advanced and stuff, that I'm in the boat that we had to have had multiple different advanced civilizations in the past. That's the only way that could explain all of this stuff. I'm at the point now that any mainstream archaeologist or scientist who claims that Sumer is our oldest advanced civilization and that nothing predates that, I'm ready to just write off anything else they have to say, because it's so blatantly obvious to me that we've had older advanced civilizations.
In Russia, they find a single pinky bone. They do the DNA testing on it, and what they discover is this isn't a Neanderthal. This isn't a modern human being. This is another human species who they named the Denisovans. They left behind physical objects, which are extremely hard to explain. A green stone bracelet, and a hole has been drilled through the bracelet, thought to be 40 or 50,000 years old. There is not supposed to have been any such technology in that period that was capable of drilling with a stable fixed drill, and yet there it is. Archaeologists started to take a look in detail at the drill marks on that hole, and what they discovered was a huge anomaly, that was drilled with a stable fixed drill at extremely high speed. It's another example of a missing chapter in the human story that is beginning to be pieced together. It's obvious now that we were not alone.
And there's just another prime example. 50,000 years old, if you can believe their carbon dating system. I have issues with that myself. But supposedly 50,000-year-old piece of jewelry that was drilled with potential, like a fixed drill technology that they weren't supposed to have access to. I'm in Graham Hancock's camp. I think we had several advanced civilizations in the past. I think that as time goes on, that we'll discover more and more, and the scientific community, the archaeological community, will just look more and more like idiots.
Around 500 to 600 BC, Solon, the Greek lawmaker, visited Egypt. He met with an Egyptian high priest who welcomed him. The priest told Solon about a superior civilization that had been destroyed by water and fire. He said that the gods had purged the earth, and that this superior and advanced civilization had been known by the name Atlantis. The priest continued to ridicule Solon's distinct lack of knowledge and told him how unsophisticated the Greeks were to think that this is the first time civilization had come this far. He said the Greeks are a young civilization in comparison to the Atlanteans. When Solon questioned the priest more, he told him that civilization has existed many times. The earth has been purged many times over. All of these times have been recorded, and we hold records of them here in our temples. He said that the Greeks and their people have only experienced plagues and floods, but no knowledge of all that happened in old times in this land or their own. The priest continued to tell Solon of the times before the Greeks. He said, "Solon, concerning the people of your country, The history you hold is little better than children's tales." A bemused Solon continued to listen to the priest. He said, "For in the first place you remember but one flood, though many had occurred previously. There was a time, Solon, before the greatest destruction by water, when what is now called the city of Athens was the bravest in war, and extremely well organized in all other respects as well. It is said that it possessed the most splendid works of art and the noblest civic organization of any people under heaven of which we have heard anything about." The priest continued to explain the character of the city and the people that preceded Athens 9,000 years earlier. "Regarding the citizens who lived 9,000 years ago, then I will tell you about them. For in front of the mouth, which you Greeks called, as you say, the Pillars of Heracles, there was an island which was larger than Libya and Asia together. This island was called Atlantis." The priest continued to tell Solon all about their great achievements and advances in technology before a great flood destroyed Atlantis. Solon reported back his findings, to which it was passed down through generations until Plato documented the visit. Perhaps in that case, we have known where Atlantis is all along. We have just not been looking there.
I'm convinced that the dude from Bright Insight has it right on the location of Atlantis. What do they call it? The Richat structure or whatever? I'm convinced that's where Atlantis was. It geologically, it maps out to like basically identically how the story goes, the layout of Atlantis. And then when you look around it, you see all these ripple marks in the landscape from massive waves rushing through there, which would have altered everything and probably destroyed the city. And they won't let anyone go down there and dig around and do any research and see what's going on there. So all those things combined, I'm certain that until someone's allowed to go down there and do some investigating, I'm convinced that was the site of Atlantis, if it existed.
Did you hear about that volcano in Italy right now?
No.
Have you heard of Campe Freghe?
All the time.
It's sitting over this giant basin of magma. Supposedly the second most powerful supervolcano on Earth. This past week, there have been 2 major earthquakes from that mountain.
That's bad.
But like, this thing goes off, we're talking like half of Italy. Mount Vesuvius, which is also in Italy, they speculate that the magma, it's connected. If Campe Flegre went off, Mount Vesuvius would go off at the same time too. It would be so intense, it would send the entire Earth into a 2 to 3 year winter.
Fart.
Like, the National Institute of Geophysics confirmed that the eruption is a present and near scenario. They said the global temperature would drop 2 degrees Celsius.
What if Mother Nature is curing herself?
Have you ever thought about humans are the virus?
If Italy gets wiped out, I'm gonna be so miffed that we've never been.
Or you'd be upset that a lot of Italian people died.
That too, obviously.
Just another doomsday prediction. We're all going to get wiped out by a volcano whenever we get a 3-year winter and we have no crops. So everyone's going to starve to death. Yay. Happy Christmas Eve.
We would keep their presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They would not make any treaty with any other Earth nation. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that the humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction, that the humans would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish MJ-12 with a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regularly scheduled basis. And this is not being done. It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning each of the other. The alien guests would remain on Earth, and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. I have no knowledge whatsoever of what happened to those original 16 humans who left the Earth with the aliens. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation, and that 2 bases would be constructed for the joint use of the alien nation and the United States government. The base at Dulce is one, the base at S4 in the area known as Area 51 or Dreamland is the second. Exchange of technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations in the four corners of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, and one would be constructed in Nevada in the area known as S4, located approximately 7 miles south of the western border of Area 51, otherwise known as Dreamland. All alien areas are under complete control of the Naval Department, and all personnel who work in these complexes receive their checks from the Navy. Construction of the bases began immediately, but progress was slow until large amounts of money were made available in 1957, and in the meantime, work continued on the Yellow Book with the information derived from the guests. I would like to say at this time that the movie that most of you may have seen, how many of you saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind? That movie was absolutely true. Those events did take place. Not exactly as you saw them, not in the place where you saw them take place, but there was a landing, there was an agreement, there was conversation, there was an exchange of personnel made. I would like to say now also that J. Allen Hynek was the technical director on that movie, and he was also the co-author of Grudge 13, which I read between the years 1970 and 1973, along with another man named Lieutenant Colonel Friend.
Here's my big problem with this. Imagine that we are an advanced civilization, far more advanced, like alien advanced, and we're traveling the star system, going to different planets, and we come across a civilization that's not as advanced as us. They're not sending people out into space yet. They're like we are now. Are we going to go down there and say, hey, we'll give you some of our hyper advanced technology in exchange from some of your stuff that we haven't used in hundreds or thousands of years? That's ridiculous. So what would, unless the aliens came here and they wanted our technology just to be nosy and see what are we messing with, what are we currently working on, so that they could see how advanced we are, that's the only reason they would be interested in our technology. Unless, because this just occurred to me, unless we are advancing in different areas of technology than they are. Just like past civilizations may have used frequency and those type technologies, and we're using electricity and moving towards those technological advancements. So if the aliens are using different types of technology, that might be why they're interested in what we're doing. That's the only reason I could think of.
Time we think of creepy paranormal video as occurring in the dark, and maybe in creepy old abandoned places. But here's a video that's from a live daytime heavy metal music festival in San Bernardino, California in 2011. And just watch very closely, because it's about to get weird. So a very big guy goes charging into the mosh pit when suddenly he seems to get clotheslined by someone or something that is completely invisible, and he goes flying backwards. Now, that would be weird enough, but his friend helps him up, and then he seems to get forcefully yanked backwards again by some unseen force. He even seems to get dragged backwards along the ground. So is this just the ghost of an angry metal fan? Is this guy just an incredible mime?
I honestly just think that kid is a good actor. I think he was on something and having too much fun.
This man is going around throwing crosses on stage at demonic concerts. I'll show you the full clips in a second, but first he went to a Playboi Carti concert, and recently he did it at a Lil Uzi Vert concert. So Playboi Carti, just like Lil Uzi, always has upside down crosses at his concerts. I mean, he even has the word Satan tattooed on his neck. Even his merch straight up has Baphomet and the pentagram and all the symbolism on it. So the video's kind of hard to see, so I'm just gonna explain what's going on. This guy goes to the very front of Playboi Carti's concert and holds a cross up in his face. And then they show his reactions, saying that he stared at him for 2 straight songs. And recently he did it at Uzi's concert, except he threw it on stage. And if you saw my most recent video, there was some weird dark stuff going on at this concert, like some type of ritual of repeating his name. And he's the same way as Carti. He loves his upside down crosses. So he goes to the very front of the stage like he did last time, throws it to him. He actually catches it, but he immediately flips it upside down. Now I'm telling you, for him to do that immediately, I mean, there's gotta be some reasoning for that. He looks back at the guy who's giving him a thumbs up, and then Uzi gives him a thumbs up back.
I don't see how anyone goes to any of these concerts and comes away still a fan. How are you gonna go and watch this clearly evil crap and then go home and pop that CD in and keep listening to it?
UFO orb swallows a Chinook helicopter in broad daylight.
I don't believe this is real. When the orb swallows the helicopter, you can see that the blades of the helicopter are sticking out farther than the width of the orb, and they just disappear. I think this is just computer generated. I could be wrong. Tell me what you think down in the comments. It looks too fake to me, too good to be true, and you know, whenever it zooms in, it just looks fake.
Has anybody talked to you about Wilkes Land?
What I've heard that it's a portal. A portal takes you from one structure to another or to a vessel outside our atmosphere, like an invisible elevator. This particular portal was underground, inside a structure.
What did it look like?
It had a frame, had hieroglyphics, whatever the meanings were, we still don't know. But the structure or the frame of this portal acted like a wormhole from point A to point B, a moon pool.
A moon pool?
The description I've been told looks just exactly like a moon pool.
Okay, what is a moon pool?
A moon pool, say it's in a submarine that's very deep. You've got a hatch in the floor that is open to the sea. Water does not come in and flood the vessel. The ambient pressure keeps that water, but you can enter the water and ascend from it through this moon pool.
And so, do you mean that, using the word moon pool, that you're saying that there's something that's vertical that looks like a moon pool?
Looks like you're walking into the water, but it's not water.
Shape?
The ones I've been described of is square.
Square?
Yes, ma'am. It would be, I'm sure you've seen the movie Stargate. Exactly same thing, except the frame is square, not round.
I think that if this was real, this guy would have questioned whoever's given him this information, and he would be able to answer the question of where does it take you, instead of just saying, oh, it's a portal to somewhere. He would have more specifics, because if they're there and they're investigating this thing, you know they sent people through it. Low-level employees they don't care about risking the lives of. Yeah, I'm going to say this is one of those coast-to-coast AM dudes that call in trying to get their 15 seconds of fame. One of those type people, I mean, just making some stuff up. Well, that's the end of the video there. I hope you enjoyed the clips we watched today. I enjoyed putting this together for you. I know no one's going to watch this. It's a very relaxed episode. I don't think anyone's going to watch it. It's Christmas Eve, but I just had to throw a video up anyway because I just feel weird if I don't post one. So I will see you guys here tomorrow. Yes, on Christmas, I will be posting a video. So if you're bored and have nothing to do after you're done opening all your gifts and filling your belly full of Christmas dinner, pop on over and see me. I'll be here waiting for you. See you tomorrow.